Contrary, no. Declare that carried. Sorry, there wasn't a loud voice of aye there, but I will take it as there was good silent aye. Carried. Okay, now we'll hear from Viv Beck, Chair of the Heart of the City, the business group that represents all the businesses of the city centre, be they retail or commercial, above the retail. And Viv is also the chair of the City Centre Advisory Board. Are you here in both capacities?
No, I'm here as chair of the advisory board.
As chair of the advisory board. Okay, we'll just make sure that we change that. Thank you, Viv.
Thank you for the opportunity to present today. So I am representing the advisory board, which is made up of members from a wide range of sectors, and we have Nolene Buckland here today, who chairs the residents group. We have previously expressed our support for the City Centre Master Plan Refresh and the work the team have put into this exercise over a significant period of time. But today I'm here to represent ACAB on one specific point. ACAB strongly recommends that not only should the waterfront and city centre master plan be integrated into one document, it needs to include the area occupied by Ports of Auckland. This will ensure the achievement of a holistic integrated plan that will guide investment and progress towards achieving the master plan vision and reiterate the importance of inclusiveness and getting buy-in from the people of Auckland. And the reason why we continue to focus on this point, I'll just go through our key reasons for it and then give a couple of examples to illustrate the point. Firstly, we'd like to see an aspirational vision for the city centre that connects closely with the waterfront, a major asset that is loved by Aucklanders, so much so that people protest to protect it and continue to put up ideas to enhance it. If we are truly to celebrate Mana Whenua, we must respect this connection between land and water through our city centre master plan. This is, after all, a site of historic importance. We have been asking over a significant period of time for more holistic planning rather than silo thinking, so we're not always fixing problems but rather proactively planning ahead. This would put a stake in the ground for a future aspiration that people can get excited about and that can guide decision-making as we work towards achieving it. We also believe that this is very important for people considering investment in the city centre, to have that sense of where the city is heading. We also believe it would save a significant amount of money and time for council and all the groups that get involved when they're concerned about how the waterfront is unfolding. I'd like to just now give a couple of examples to illustrate why we think this is so important. We've seen over a period of time how the separateness of the master plan, the waterfront and the port has created some less than optimal outcomes. So looking at the mooring dolphins, they've been consented to hang off the end of Queen's Wharf for 15 years until a permanent home for large cruise ships has been achieved. A number of issues with that. The costs have significantly risen, as you know, in the interim, and they will also cost money to remove. The port is building a covered car park to move the uncovered cars from the wharf next door. The port strategy work is underway that is considering the long-term future of the port. Now, at the time the port released its master plan, concerns were raised that we needed to see an aligned approach, and we were assured that executives were working together, but in the end, there may have been discussions, but nothing actually changed. So we maintain that if the port land had been included in the master plan vision, the lens of working through the challenges would have been different, and we'd actually doubt they would be building a car park now. So simplistically, we think the question would have been, what do we all need to do to meet the long-term needs of crews? Not, how do we all get our individual needs met and then meet the needs of larger cruise ships? And I'll reiterate, this is not directed at the staff who work on these individual plans. We understand they're working to brief, but this is a very important principle, we believe, for the future of the city. I also want to reiterate, please, that it is not an anti-port stance, rather a pro-waterfront stance. It's a major city asset that needs to be thought about more holistically, in our view, rather than being in a position of making incremental decisions. There are other examples. I'll just briefly touch on one other. The downtown public spaces, clearly people have views about design and they sometimes vary. But the overarching question in our group was how can we really make a decision without knowing what is going to happen to Queen's Wharf, which in turn is waiting on government plans for the clouds. So the question is why we're limiting our thinking in this way. I won't spend time talking about the what appeared to be a lack of alignment around the how the Quay Street changes have been made. I think I've made the point. But on top of this, discussions about stadia, cultural centres and big ideas that could really make our city centre and waterfront a truly unique attraction and culturally and socially richer are put up on the table. And we believe an aligned approach to the whole city centre and waterfront will reap a much better result for the city. It will also ensure that once we have feedback from the public, we can get on and start planning with confidence rather than letting great ideas just gather dust. Finally, I'd like to say that it's good to see acknowledgement in the paper. I think we have raised these points through the workshop and it's really great to see those acknowledged in the paper, points 64 to 68. So that's really good to see. And it's also good to note that community views will be sought, but it's unclear from this how people will provide feedback and when will it become one combined plan, and how we can avoid more ad hoc decision making in the interim. So if you look at point 68, the final views, community views will be sought to inform council decisions and to ensure integration with the city centre master plan, which may need to be updated at the appropriate time. So we still really have questions about how this will be handled going forward. And these are genuine concerns that we're making on behalf of our group for the future of the city, and we ask that you please take them on board in your deliberations today. Thank you.
Thank you, Viv. Good points. Questions on those points, members? There being none, Councillor Walker.
In terms of the integration of the Portland and the city centre, I think there's a lot of logic around that. Where are we at around that?
That's not a question for Viv, that's a question for Ludo Campbell-Reid and George Weeks when we come to the item. And if you
Viv might have known an answer on that, but that's her call.
It is more of a question for our staff than Viv, and Viv has actually just articulated a very clear reason why her group, the City Centre Advisory Board, remember, Advisory Board, wants it to not have a demarcation line around it with exclusion, don't go there. It's quite the opposite. What we're hearing from the City Centre Advisory Board is it wants that demarcation line removed, and for us to find a way to consider and include ideas from our community and express ideas from the leadership of this group about that land, with the knowledge that subject to our own decisions and government decisions, there might continue to be a port there for 5, 10, 20, 30 years. In summary, is that...
Yeah, that's...
Sorry, don't want to
summary.
paraphrase you
Yeah.
inaccurately. But, Councillor, can we pose that question to Ludo Campbell-Reid? Good. Another question, Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Thank you for your presentation. I'm really curious to find out why you think having the ports in a master plan would potentially end up with them not having their car parking facility built where it's proposed to be built. Thank you.
Because I think the questions would have been different. So instead of people saying, okay, we need to find a home for for the larger cruise ships, we need this for our master plan, we need this area for something else, there would have been a step back taken to say, we're looking for a home for cruise, we want to find the best way of achieving that. And what I'm saying is that it's not an optimum outcome for the city to move the ports from an uncovered position on one wharf across into a covered position on the one next door. And if the different questions were asked, we believed it would have achieved different answers, and that's the point we're making. So we want to see a different approach to decision making that has, if everybody was on the same journey for the city, different questions would be asked and different solutions would come up. There's always going to be different ways of doing things, but there would have been different views about how you could use the space we've got. There would have been the concerns around that people have around encroachment into the harbour. You might have looked differently about some of the other spaces available for cruise ships that are off the table at the moment because of the different groups looking at what's important for their interests. So we're not, I understand how those decisions are being made. What we're saying is a step back, looking at the whole space, all the needs, we think would have come up with a different solution. And just if I can make one comment in terms, I think, Councillor Walker, we're asking for the opportunity for more clarity around what that process is to take a broader view.
Thanks, Viv, and thanks for chairing the City Centre Advisory Board. The board has been extremely exercised on this, and it's taken up a lot of time. There's been very deep engagement by all your member groups, from universities right through the residents group, business groups. All the members of your group have been quite strong in their advocacy for this. So, thank you.
Thank you.
No further questions. Would somebody like to, Councillor Hills? A vote of appreciation to Viv, and Councillor Walker will second. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. Declare that carried. Thank you, Viv, on behalf of the City Centre Advisory